Hi, everyone. Heather Williams here from the California AfterSchool Network for another Fireside Chat. This week, as usual, we are joined by Michael Funk from CDE, and we are also joined by special guest Sterling Williams, a new addition to CDE, but not a new addition to expanded learning. So excited to have him on today. Won't talk too long, gonna jump right into it. I know it's been a few weeks since we've had a chat, and there has been a lot of work behind the scenes trying to get answers. We know there's a lot of questions, a lot of planning that needs to happen, a lot of questions that need to be answered. And so a lot of people working hard behind the scenes to get that information out to you all. So I'll just turn it over to you, Michael, to let us know what's been going on and kind of where we're at.
Thanks, Heather, and welcome Sterling, wrapping up his fourth week at the California Department of Education, and he's still smiling. I love it. Hey, everybody, happy Friday. I know it's August. I know schools are starting, the late schools are starting in less than 4 weeks. Most of your schools are either on the cusp of starting. Some in this area have started because they have a portion of the schools are year-round schedule. And I know that, questions are coming in, good questions, understandable questions. And we have been working since the signing of the budget on figuring out the details, even though I and some of my team were involved in multiple versions of the language that ultimately become the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program. Before it was signed into law, there were still multiple sections that it wasn't quite clear what it meant. And so Department of Finance and the legislature and the State Board of Education were sent questions that were generated from the field. They took a week or so and developed responses to those. They sent those to us 2 weeks ago today. We worked on a response over the course of several days because there was a lot of nuance and some things that were seemingly contradictory. And I use seemingly on purpose. And then a meeting was set up a week ago Tuesday to have dialogue with Department of Finance, Leg staff, State Board of Education staff, our own governmental affairs, legal, all the folks in the same space. And we had a very generative conversation to figure this out. Just yesterday, the Department of Finance approved and the Leg staff approved our version of what happened in that meeting a week ago Tuesday, but I'm unable to post those 6 frequently asked questions, which will bring a lot of clarity, until I get one more small thing covered with a potential amendment that's necessary. And unfortunately, I can't give you the details today, but I wanted to be really honest and tell you where we're at in the process. We believe we will have these questions posted early next week, and we'll jump back on a chat and talk through them with you. One thing that has come up quite often over the course of the last several weeks are people concerned. This is a lot of money, 1.75 billion growing to 5 billion. By the way, the money is in 2 different parts. There's money in AB 130 and money in SB 129. So there's money in 2 places for this. Together, it comes to 1.75 billion. And there's a lot of concern. Is this going to compete with ASES? Am I going to meet my ASES numbers? How is this going to work? The one thing I will tell you that was crystal clear in this conversation a week ago Tuesday was the Department of Finance Leg staff unanimously said, it is the intent that ASES, the After School Education Safety Program, 21st Century Elementary and Middle, and the new Expanded Learning Opportunities Program be one unified, coordinated program in the state of California. They know, and I know, that there's a lot of details that still have to be worked out, even beyond the FAQs that we deliver. But there are very specific things that'll be in the FAQs that'll amplify that message. But I can tell you that is the intent of, in the bill, AB 130, of what language is referenced that says this ELO program. And I'm using that phrase. I'm continuing to resist the ELO-P acronym. If anybody in California uses the acronym ELO-P, you're going to be fined $1. ELO program. The intent is for the ELO program to grow and become really the foundation for universal expanded learning. And how ACES in 21st century tie into that and fit it together, we don't know, but the intent was that the ed code that describes what the components of the ACES program are, what the staff qualifications for the ACES program are, they're the same for the ELO program by design, with the intent and the hope that districts don't create a whole separate universe over here for some kids and a whole universe over here for some other kids. The vision in California is for universal expanded learning, and that different funding sources and streams can be braided together. And there'll be more. I know, I just said something, and most of you watching have already formulated 5 questions about what I just said. I get it, and we will be as clear as we can. So stay tuned. It hasn't been for lack of effort or long hours and weekends to try to get you what you need. I do want to say one thing that's not related to the ELO program. Many of you have expressed concern that we're having difficulty hiring staff. I mean, every sector of industry is having difficulty hiring staff, whether it's airlines to fast food to construction to after school. But as a result, there is a concern, hey, I'm not going to be able to enroll as many students or serve as many. We're going to be out of ratio. I'm not going to make my numbers for this fall. We're going to have kind of a slow ramp up. And I just want to say, there was an email we sent out from the department several weeks ago. It was sent to the grantees, which means some of you didn't see it. And even if you read it, you might not have fully grasped what this means, but grant reductions have been suspended for 2021. And because of the getting into the specifics of how grant suspensions are calculated, it's based on a calendar year, not the school year. So I want to emphasize that your attendance for the fall of 2021 or lack thereof will not be counted against you towards a grant reduction. You have the full calendar year of 2022 to meet your attendance goal of 75 or 85%, depending on what year you are in your program. So 2022 is when we'll start the counting again towards meeting your attendance goals. I hope that's helpful. I know in some meetings across the state that was shared this week earlier, and it was helpful to those people. So with that, Heather, that's my update. I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Thanks, Michael. And I'm going to turn over to Sterling in just a moment. And before I do that, I just want to say, I've been in different meetings, conversations, people sending questions. As you said, Michael, a lot of nuance, a lot of in the weeds conversations, and people are asking, what do we do? And I would say from my perspective, my one piece of advice is, yes, there's a lot of questions to be worked out, develop those questions, flag those, but that should not prevent you from doing kind of the core planning. If you know this money's coming down, if you know that you are in an LEA that has over 80% unduplicated students, you know you're going to get a significant amount of funding coming in this year. And so at a minimum, you should be starting conversations with your district. Doesn't mean that you'll have all the answers, but you should at least be thinking about what this might look like in your district. So don't wait for all the answers to start planning, but do know that the answers are coming. So that's my one piece of advice. But now I want to turn it over to Sterling. Sterling's been in the expanded learning field for a while. He came from the program side, then went to the county office side. And so he's been in our system of support for expanded learning for a little while. And so he had some different context going into his experience at the CDE. And we're very fortunate to have him there with that context. But Sterling, I'd love to turn it over to you to talk a little bit about, what's been going on your first month at CDE.
Thanks, Heather. It's been interesting, right? You wake up one day and you report directly to Michael Funk, and they're asking you what your opinion is on how to spend several $1 billion. So, yeah, it's been fun. It's definitely been hitting the ground running. The biggest realization I think I've had thus far is how many divisions and people are involved in the process. I think before getting here, I felt like if the EXLD just kind of locked themselves in a room and worked a little harder, they could just kind of crank this out for people, and we'd have the answers that we're looking for. But there's just a lot of different touch points. There are a lot of different folks with contributions, all helpful. But then it also prolongs the process to really get something out to the field. So I think that's been my biggest learning so far.
That is a big one. It can be it can be very easy to assume what's happening when you can't see what's happening behind closed doors. So definitely appreciate that perspective, and wondering, Sterling, if you might just talk for a quick minute about your background and your perspective that you are bringing to the CDE, because I do think it's really important that someone that's been in the field is now helping support with this brand new massive program.
Like all the things, right? Sure. So I've been in direct service, been part of ARC, one of the organizations down in LA County. I've overseen staff. I've been a part of the regional team, the county office for LA with Michelle Perrineau, and been very involved in helping LEAs with compliance, and then really just quality programming support. So coming into the space, really aware of how the FAQs and some of the assembly bills are going to impact staff, organizations, and eventually students. And so, for example, there are conversations where someone might say, oh, we want, 100% of students to participate, right? And that sounds really great, and we want that as well. But there's a difference between like participation, which is difference between attendance, which is different from enrollment, right? So really just advocating for setting up our LEAs in the best possible way to be successful. I would also note that the way the FAQs work, there's never going to be an exhaustive list of all the things you can do, right? So there will be guidance as to, hey, you can't do these things. These are the pitfalls. Here's where you're going to find yourself in trouble. And then it's left up to the field to kind of see like all the opportunities that are out there, all the space for innovative programming, where you can really step in and create some things that you haven't done in the past, maybe because of lack of funding, right? So opportunities with STEAM and project-based learning, work-based learning, right? These things that, you probably thought about years ago, but didn't have the funds to create something like that, is definitely a really good opportunity to start planning CQI, right? And just really taking consideration of what would be helpful for your students now in the short term, and then also the long term.
Well, that's some great advice and some great recommendations. Michael, any questions for Sterling before we wrap up, or any last
Well, a couple
thoughts you want to
things.
share?
So we're planning some opportunities. We will schedule a fireside chat as soon as we post the FAQs to actually have a discussion about it. And we'll try to bring on a guest in addition that can shed some light, who's already been doing some planning on this, because we know during the pandemic, bringing people on the fireside chat that were actually examples of how someone was implementing the guidance on the ground was very helpful to many. I also know that I guess we should just say we haven't, I don't think said it. I've said before that the flexibility that we had during the pandemic and the ed code that was waived was probably not going to happen, and that is now the case. So just to say that, but we'll talk more about what that means. But school's definitely going to be back, and we're all watching carefully the Delta variant making things complex and difficult and challenging. But even in the midst of that, there's no one's backing up from children going back to school and school being in session. And as a result, out of school time and after school is back in play as a need for communities and families and students. We are planning an event along with the CDE Foundation for September 1st in the afternoon. Save the date. We're going to have plenaries and workshops specifically around the Expanded Learning Opportunity Program. So September 1st in the afternoon, there's been some early promotion of that through the CDE Foundation. And if you're not on the California AfterSchool Network listserv, sign up, because that's where you'll hear about these things. So Sterling, you've been here a month. It's been inspiring for me to see someone coming from the field, from a county office, from the system of support, with great experience and making an immediate contribution to things that matter. And Sterling, would you recommend somebody follow your footsteps if they're interested?
Absolutely. It's an opportunity to create some systemic change, and the more folks that are within the system to do that, I think the better. I guess one side note is look for opportunities to have administrator in your resume. That would help.
So we have, in the budget, we received funding for a significant increase in positions, and we're working on the staffing structure, what that design is going to look like, but we'll be advertising for more staff for the EXLD. So there is a path to pursue if you're interested. Thank you, Sterling, for coming on board. Heather, I would just say to close today, what an amazing moment we have, even with all the complexities and all the challenges and all the anxiety. What an amazing moment we have, that a year ago, if you would have asked anyone in the system if we would be sitting here talking about how to implement $1.75 billion in a way that doesn't threaten ASES, and when is that rate increase up to 1018 for ACES actually going to come? And when am I going to learn more details? By the way, that's forthcoming too. That's been much more complex to work on than anybody anticipated, but we made some headway yesterday, and we're working on the specifics. We wouldn't have believed ourselves if we were describing this moment. So we need to be stewards of the moment, and we are just the right people to be given this opportunity, because we innately care deeply and love our children deeply and want the best for them and serve them. And I believe that is why we have this opportunity now. So let's lead with love, and hope you all have a good weekend.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Sterling. Until next time.